Marcus Reed had been on the road since early morning, the kind of morning that made the sky look washed clean. He liked hours like this, when light was soft, traffic was thin, and the world felt willing to give a person a fair start. He kept his speed steady and his mind light, sipping coffee from a travel mug and humming along to songs he knew by heart. The long drive was not new to him. As a former army medic, he had spent years learning how to sit with time, how to wait without worry, and how to keep a clear head no matter what the day decided to bring. By late morning he turned off the highway toward a small gas station with 2 pump islands and a crooked neon sign that buzzed even in daylight. A wind chime made from old keys swung by the door to the store, clinking in a friendly way. In the distance a field of tall grass rippled like water. On the building, someone had painted a mural of a big bluebird flying over a green hill. It was not fancy, but it felt cared for. Marcus liked places where someone had tried to make things a little nicer for strangers. He pulled up to a pump, cut the engine, and stepped out into the warm air. The smell of gasoline, fresh cut grass, and frying dough from the small griddle inside mixed into something oddly pleasant. He stretched the tightness from his shoulders and rolled his neck once, the way he did after long shifts at the warehouse. The mirror on the driver's side showed a clean-shaven face, a patient gaze, and a man comfortable in his own skin. He adjusted the angle by habit, more ritual than need, and started the pump. While the tank filled, he checked his route on his phone. He was ahead of schedule, which meant he could get water, a pack of trail mix, and maybe a cup of ice. He liked leaving places better than he found them. His mother had taught him that, and even years after she passed, the lesson still felt fresh. Sometimes leaving a place better meant picking up a stray receipt that blew across the lot. Sometimes it meant a kind word to a clerk. Sometimes it meant nothing more than a smile. The sound of motorcycles came across the road like a low drum roll, first one engine, then another, then a few more. A small group of riders turned into the lot and rolled to a loose stop near the other pump island. The bikes were shiny and well kept, chrome catching the sun, paint jobs deep and glossy. Their jackets showed different patches, not all the same kind, and their laughter carried easily on the breeze. Marcus had known many riders in his life, including a few from the hospital where he had worked. Most were friendly, the kind of people who would hand you a bungee cord without being asked. He gave a small nod toward the group, a simple hello from one traveler to another, and returned his attention to the pump. The numbers clicked up. A sparrow landed on the pump roof and peered down at him, head tipped like it wanted to understand why people stood beside big metal boxes and watched numbers change. Marcus grinned at the thought. When the tank reached full, the handle snapped and he hung it back, careful and neat. He screwed on the cap, wiped a small smudge from the gas door with a napkin, and pocketed the receipt. Inside the store, cool air brushed his face. The floor was clean, bright with the shine that came from regular mopping. The clerk at the counter wore a name tag that read Rita in a slanted hand. She was rearranging a display of chewing gum into tidy rows. Marcus picked up 2 bottles of water, a pack of trail mix, and a small bag of dried mango. He paid, added a cup of ice to the purchase, and dropped his change into the plastic jar marked for a local youth center. He liked how the jar was half full of coins from people he would never meet. That kind of quiet giving always moved him. On his way to the door, he noticed a kid leaning on the freezer case near the back, tracing a finger along the glass like he was drawing. The kid looked up, curious about the man in the neat polo shirt and scuffed work boots. Marcus smiled and gave a small wave. The kid smiled back, shy but pleased, and returned to his invisible drawing. Out the window, the riders still talked and laughed. One of them set a helmet on the seat of a bike and used both hands to stretch his gloves. They were just people on a break, same as him. When Marcus stepped back into the sunlight, his eyes took a second to adjust from the store's cool white. He felt the warm air again, and the day's pleasant hum returned. He walked toward his car with the ice cup and the bag in one hand and his keys in the other. The lot had grown busier, a pickup at the far pump, a compact car waiting for a spot, one of the riders coasting slowly to shift into a better space. Marcus paused to let that rider pass before crossing behind his own car. The gloves on the rider's hands winked in the sun as the bike crept along, careful but close. As Marcus reached his driver's side, he heard a light tap, just a small click. The rider's handlebar had gently brushed his side mirror as the bike eased in. It sounded minor, not a crash, more like the sound of a spoon against a glass. Marcus set his cup on the roof and crouched to check the mirror. It had tilted a little from his perfect angle, the way a picture frame tilts when someone shuts a door too hard. There was no crack, no scrape, nothing to ruin a day. He adjusted the mirror with the soft pressure of 2 fingers until it clicked back into place. He stood and looked over to the rider with an open hand that said, "No problem, all good." His first thought was that things like this happen at busy pumps. He believed it was better to treat small things as small. It kept the air gentle. The rider looked back, visor up now, and gave a short nod. The engine idled with a gentle purr. Everything seemed ready to move on. Marcus reached for his cup, but the rider's foot shifted and the bike angled a small degree toward his car again. It was not much, but enough for Marcus to step back so there would be more space. He smiled and said in a clear, friendly voice, "I'll give you room." He always chose words that allowed people to keep their pride. In his experience, kindness was not only the right thing, it was also the most practical way to keep the day simple. Another rider, tall and broad-shouldered, stepped down from his bike and walked over with unhurried steps. He stopped near Marcus's front bumper and looked at the mirror, then at Marcus. His face did not carry a harsh look, but it did not carry a warm one either. It had the blankness of a person deciding how to read a moment. Marcus kept his posture relaxed, shoulders low, hands visible, voice easy. "Mirror's fine," he said, still friendly. "No harm done." 2 more riders drifted closer, drawn perhaps by curiosity more than anything else. They were not shoulder to shoulder, not crowding, just near enough to feel present. Marcus recognized how groups sometimes moved. One person watches, another steps in, a third follows without thinking about it. The lot's gentle hum shifted, almost too slight to name, like the way wind changes direction before you notice it. In the store window, he saw the clerk pause her gum display and look out, attentive. Marcus took in the scene the way he had been trained to notice a room, exits, lines of sight, places where people might step without looking, the useful details that keep everyone safe. He did this without alarm. It was reflex, like checking a seat belt. He saw the camera mounted under the store's eaves and another above the door. He noticed the clear walkway between his car and the pump, and the empty space on the far side of his hood where a person could stand without being in anyone's way. He saw small things too, a cap rolling near the curb, a napkin caught under a tire, the bright stripe of a candy wrapper peeking from a crack in the asphalt. These were ordinary details, and ordinary details steadied him. He set the water and snack on his front seat and closed the door gently, leaving it unlocked. He kept his keys in his palm, not clenched, just there. He felt the cool weight of the key fob and the slight texture of the plastic against his skin. He chose to keep his hands easy and open because open hands told people the truth, he meant no harm. He had learned long ago that people listen not only to words but also to how a person holds himself. The tall rider near his bumper glanced at the mirror again. "You sure it's okay?" he asked, voice neutral. Marcus nodded. "It's okay," he said, and added with a small smile, "I keep it clean, so I notice when it shifts. But it's fine." He offered this as a bridge, a way to let everyone step off the moment without losing face. In many situations, a simple bridge is all a day needs. A rider behind the tall one tilted his head as if to say, "Is that all?" He looked from the mirror to the narrow space between the bike and the car and then back to Marcus. It took almost no time, a blink really, but Marcus saw a choice forming in that person's eyes. He had seen such choices many times in waiting rooms, on sidewalks, in office break rooms. A person can lean toward ease or toward tension. Marcus's job, as he understood it, was to make ease the simplest option. He used a tone he had practiced as a medic in crowded places, the tone that carried clearly but softly, the tone that invited people to settle. "I'm going to step over here," he said, motioning to the open spot by his hood, "so you have more room to park. Then I'll be on my way." He made the gesture slow and readable, a small arc of the hand from his chest to the open space. The words were plain, and the plan was practical. It gave everyone something to agree with. He moved to the spot he had indicated and felt the sun on his forearms. The bikes idled, then quieted as a couple of engines cut off. The wind chime by the door sang two bright notes. Marcus saw the clerk still watching. She met his eyes for a second, and he gave a small nod that tried to say everything is okay. She nodded back, reassured but still attentive. It meant a lot to him that people looked out for one another in small places like this. For a heartbeat the moment hung there, neutral and light, waiting to be called one way or the other. Marcus's mother used to say that peace does not always walk into a room on its own, sometimes someone has to hold the door. He could almost hear her voice now, warm and steady, reminding him to breathe, to choose words that build a bridge instead of a wall, to trust that calm is contagious when a person is brave enough to offer it first. So he offered it. He kept his shoulders easy and his feet planted. He kept his voice clear and kind. He let his hands rest at his sides where anyone could see them. He stayed where the cameras could see him too, not because he feared anything, but because good choices like good light make everything clearer. He felt the cool line of the shadow fall across the lot as a small cloud moved overhead, and he thought, this is just a small moment, nothing more. Let's help it stay small. The tall rider gave a half shrug and stepped back only a little, but enough to let the air move between them. Another rider turned his head toward the store as if he had remembered something he meant to buy. The bike that had brushed the mirror settled into a neat angle at the curb with only a soft whisper of tires. The lot sound returned to its old mix of small clinks and calm voices. Marcus opened his car door again and set his cup in the holder, listening for any cue that asked for more from him. He heard none. Before he got in, he took one more look around, not out of worry but out of care. He checked the space for the kid in the store, the clerk, the other customer by the far pump now replacing a gas cap. He had a habit of leaving places with the same care he felt when entering them. He smoothed a wrinkle on the bag of dried mango. He adjusted the folded receipt in the cup holder. He took a slow breath and felt how the day, even after a surprise, still sat lightly. He knew that sometimes life asks a person to choose who they want to be in the space of a few seconds. He chose, as he usually did, to be the person who keeps things calm. He chose steady words, steady steps, and good light. He chose to believe that most people, given a clear path to ease, will take it. With that choice sitting firm in his chest, he rested one hand lightly on the door frame and prepared to continue his drive, ready to leave the small gas station better than he found it. Marcus settled into a calm plan the way a careful driver settles into the correct lane. He stayed near the front of his car where the store cameras could see him. His hands were open. His voice stayed even. The day was still bright and warm. He wanted it to stay that way. The riders were close, but not yet too close. He chose simple words that left room for people to make good choices. "I'm heading out," he said, friendly and clear. "Do you all need this spot? I can move if that helps." One rider, the tall one from before, looked at the mirror and then at Marcus. His face was hard to read, like a person deciding between two roads on a map. He did not say anything right away. Behind him, Another rider lifted his chin in a way that asked for attention without words. The air in the lot felt a little tight, the way air feels when a storm is far away but still possible. A silver pickup rolled in and idled near the curb. The driver watched the scene, not in a nosy way, just aware. The clerk, Rita, stepped a little closer to the window. She pulled her phone from her apron. Marcus caught her eye. He did not want to create fear, but he did want witnesses to feel welcome and safe. He lifted his hand in a small, grateful wave. She nodded, holding the phone low, as if to say, "I'm here if needed." That small sign of support steadied him more than he expected. In his mind, he heard an old training line, "Safety grows in layers. Each simple step adds a layer." The tall rider spoke at last. "So, it touched," he said, nodding toward the mirror. His voice carried no harsh words, only the blunt sound of a person who wanted the last say. Marcus kept his tone easy. "It did. Very lightly," he said. "It's fine. No harm done. We're all good." He gave a little smile, the kind you share with a neighbor when a trash bin tips in the wind and you both set it right again. He hoped that image of shared care could be the picture everyone followed. Another rider, younger, shifted his boots and looked down at the little line of gravel by the tire. He kicked a tiny stone with the tip of his shoe as if he needed to do something with his energy. The stone tapped against the rubber and stopped. He looked up as though he wanted more from the moment, though maybe even he did not know what. Group energy can be like that, Marcus knew. It moves and looks for a shape to fill. He wanted to give it a good shape. He thought of 3 small steps he had learned and used 100 times: look, breathe, choose. He looked, exits, cameras, people, space. He breathed, slow and deep, steadying his heartbeat. He chose, simple language and clear paths. "If you're worried about the mirror," he said, still gentle, "we can take a photo, note the time, and share numbers. It's easy." He reached into his pocket, not for anything sharp, not for anything that could startle, but for his phone. He lifted it with an open palm and turned the screen toward them so they saw it was only a phone. "I'll take one picture and we'll be done." The tall rider gave the smallest shrug. It could mean yes. It could mean maybe. Marcus took the photo, quick and simple. He slid the phone back into his pocket, no rush, no sudden moves. The young rider stepped a little closer, then stopped as if he met an invisible line. Marcus had drawn that line on purpose, with his stance and his eyes and the way he kept his shoulders down. He had learned that calm is not only a feeling, it is a posture that others can read. A low laugh drifted from a rider still seated on his bike. Maybe it was a nervous laugh. Maybe it was a tough guy laugh. It did not matter. Marcus let it pass. He knew not to chase every sound with a reply. The silver pickup's window rolled down, and a middle-aged man with a baseball cap leaned an elbow on the edge. "You folks need the pump," the man called. "I can pull back if it helps." It was a simple offer, but it reset the scene. Now the question was not who was right, it was how to share a small space so everyone could move on. Marcus turned to the man and gave a nod. "You're fine, sir," he said. "Thank you for asking." He was careful to keep his attention moving in a steady circle: the riders, the store, the pickup, the open lot. People feel calmer when they see that someone is calmly seeing them. The kid inside pressed his face to the glass, wide-eyed but not scared. A woman near the far pump set her nozzle back and closed her gas cap, watching with a ready sort of concern that looked like she would speak up if needed. The young rider did a small thing that was not helpful. He flicked his glove fingers so they clicked together, then he looked at the ground and toed at Marcus's key fob with the edge of his boot. The key spun half a circle in Marcus's palm and stayed there, safe. It was a tiny act, maybe meant as a joke, maybe not. Marcus did not react in a way that fed it. He only said, steady as a metronome, "Hey, please give me a little space." Then he took half a step to the side so his back was to nothing but open air and the wide hood of his car. He checked his voice. Was it low? Was it clear? Yes. He checked his face. Was it calm? Was it kind? Yes. In the army, he had learned that the first person to breathe sets the pace for the room. He breathed in a way that someone could copy if they wanted to. The young rider tucked his chin and looked away, then up, as if he was not sure what to do with his hands, his eyes, his role in front of his friends. The tall rider spoke again. "You making a report or something?" he asked. The question carried weight, like a train moving slow but heavy. Marcus understood that weight. He chose words that were true and light. "Only if needed," he said. "I prefer a quick, friendly fix. We can all continue our day." He let that idea sit. He did not rush to fill silence. Helpful words need space to sink in. A small breeze came and moved the key wind chime by the door. It sang a few soft notes. The sound was ordinary, and ordinary sounds help people find their footing when a moment feels strange. Marcus noticed how the ordinary began to return. Someone coughed, a soda cooler in the store hummed, a bird made a bright call from the trees beyond the lot. The world did not stop for this little scene, it went on. That fact alone helps people choose good behavior. Most people want to go with the flow of the day. The tall rider seemed to feel it too. His shoulders eased a little. He looked down at his boots and then at the others, maybe checking whether he needed to keep acting like a wall or whether he could be a door. Marcus offered an exit, plain and easy. "I'm going to pull forward," he said, "so you can use the pump. I'll be out of your way in 30 seconds. He lifted his keys again, turned his body toward his door, and paused just long enough for anyone to speak if there was a true need. The young rider made a face like he wanted to say something sharp. Then he glanced up at the store camera, and the tight look softened. That tiny glance mattered. Cameras are not about catching people, they are about reminding people of the kind of person they want to be when others can see. The seated rider with the low laugh cleared his throat and said, "Yeah, go ahead." His tone had changed. It was lighter, more like a neighbor voice than a stage voice. Marcus opened the door and set one foot in, then looked back over his shoulder to be sure no one had stepped into the path. He was always careful about blind spots. He adjusted his mirror the last little click to perfect, placed his cup in the holder, and turned the key. The engine came to life with that friendly, everyday sound that says, "Let's go." He put the car in drive, rolled forward a few feet, and stopped in a better spot that freed up the pump. He lifted a hand from the wheel in a small wave of thanks for the space. He stepped out again to close the gas door he had checked earlier. The tall rider gave him a look that was no longer hard to read. It was the look of a person who had stepped back from a cliff and felt better for it. "All right," the rider said, not quite a thank you, but close enough in the language of pride. Marcus nodded. "All right," he echoed, letting the word be the bridge it wanted to be. The woman from the far pump called out in a friendly way, "Safe travels, folks." It sounded like a blessing. Words like that can settle dust. The pickup driver tipped his cap. The kid in the store smiled again, this time with a little wave. Rita gave a visible breath and moved back from the window, but not before Marcus saw her lift the corner of her mouth in a small, proud smile, the kind a person has when a place she works is peaceful again. Marcus felt the quiet gains that had been made, the way a knot in a rope loosens one twist at a time. He knew the moment was not a movie scene, not a story for big reactions, and that was the strength of it. It was a small human place where people could choose steady over show. The riders still had their noise and shine. He still had his calm and plan. Those things could share the same parking lot without harm. Then came the shift that told him the test was not over yet. One more rider, who had been slow to park and slow to join, swung a boot off his bike and walked toward the store. He noticed the photo Marcus had taken earlier. He stopped near Marcus's front fender and, with a little smirk, asked, "You put that on the internet?" He did not use a bad word, but his tone carried a rock tossed into still water. It was a new ripple, and all the eyes came back to Marcus. Marcus met the new rider's gaze with a steady look. "No," he said simply. "It's for my notes. That's all." His voice stayed steady, and he added a helpful line. "If you want, I can show you the picture. It's just the mirror." He said it like a neighbor explaining a fence line. He kept his shoulders open, his chin level. He did not challenge. He did not bow. He stood as a person among people, with respect for himself and room for others. The rider held the look for a breath, then gave a tiny shake of his head as if to clear some thought that had tried to catch. "Whatever," he said, but his voice had lost its edge. He walked past Marcus and went inside. As the door opened, the chime sang again. Rita greeted him with the same even tone she had used for Marcus earlier that morning. That tone, steady and fair, does work that fists and shouts never can. Marcus took in the scene one more time like a map: cameras, people, exits, lanes. He noted that 3 good witnesses were present without trying to be heroes: the pickup driver, the woman from the far pump, and Rita. He noted that the sound of the lot had returned to the gentle mix of engine purr, light talk, and soft wind. The young rider had found a better use for his hands. He pulled his gloves off and clipped them to his belt. The tall rider checked his fuel cap and nodded to himself like a man who had decided to let a small thing stay small. Marcus felt the sun on his forearm and the cool of the cup in his palm. He thought again of his simple 3 steps: look, breathe, choose. They had carried him through long nights in busy rooms and long days on busy roads. They could carry anyone who wanted them. He did not need a speech, a lesson, or a show. He needed only to keep doing the next right small thing. He turned back into his car, set the bag of dried mango on the seat, and fastened his belt. He waited a moment to be sure the riders had the space they needed at the pump. He watched the kid in the store, now back to tracing shapes on the freezer glass, more interested in his quiet game than in the adults outside. He saw Rita's shoulders settle and her attention return to her gum display. He heard the pickup's turn signal click, a polite little metronome of normal life. In his mirror, he saw his own eyes. They were steady. He felt grateful for that. Not everyone gets steadiness for free. Some people learn it the slow way, one careful breath at a time. He whispered a thank you to his mother, to every patient who had taught him the weight of calm, to every teacher who had drilled simple habits until they lived in his bones. He did not need the world to know that he was trained. He needed only to keep acting like it. He checked his surroundings one last time and prepared to ease out of the spot. The day could still be simple. The road could still be kind. The people in the lot could still be neighbors to one another, even if they never met again. He set his hand on the shifter, felt the smooth shape of the knob, and waited for one beat more, the beat a careful person gives the world so it can find its better side. Then, with a small press on the pedal, he let the car creep forward, holding his calm like a lantern that anyone could see if they wanted its light. Marcus eased the car forward and checked both mirrors. The lot looked ordinary again, the way a kitchen looks after dishes are done and the counter is wiped. He felt thankful for that. He wanted to keep it that way. He signaled, looked over his shoulder, and inched toward the lane that led back to the road. Then a small mix-up happened, the kind that could happen anywhere. 2 bikes rolled at the same time toward the same space, and one drifted across the lane in front of his bumper. It was not on purpose, it was simply timing. Marcus pressed the brake, steady and smooth. The car stopped with a quiet sigh. He lifted a hand in a friendly go-ahead. He meant it. But the pause made space for attention to gather again. The young rider, the one who had been restless before, turned his head and took 2 steps closer to Marcus's fender as if to check the mirror himself. The movement was quick, and his boot caught the edge of Marcus's cup on the roof. The cup didn't fall far, it slid and bumped against the windshield. A handful of ice cubes scattered and clicked across the glass like tiny marbles. The sound made several people look up at once. For a second, the air tightened. The young rider grimaced, not angry, more embarrassed, like someone who knocks over a salt shaker at a quiet dinner. Marcus did not wince. He did not sigh. He chose something else. He turned off the wipers so they would not drag a cube, put the car in park, and stepped out with an easy motion. "It's okay," he said in a calm voice that carried. "It's only ice. I'll pick it up." He gathered the cubes with the flat of his palm and dropped them into the cup. The tall rider watched, chin tucked, as if testing whether Marcus would turn this small mishap into a big scene. Marcus did the opposite. He took a napkin from the door pocket, wiped the last wet dot near the edge of the windshield, and smiled. "Hot day," he added, light as a summer cloud. "The roof probably needed a rinse." That small choice gentle words instead of a sharp look kept the moment from hardening. Still, a breaking point often arrives not as a single loud thing but as several small things in a row. As Marcus set the cup back, another rider rolled his bike a half-meter without noticing that he had stopped in the exact spot Marcus needed to pass. It made a narrow path even narrower. The silver pickup's driver gave a quick, polite honk to alert everyone that cars were still moving. The sound was mild, but it stacked on top of the ice click and the bike shuffle. Stacked sounds can make people feel like they must pick a side. Marcus felt the stack. He knew the next seconds mattered. He did what he had trained himself to do on long, crowded nights. He gave the moment a shape. He lifted his hand, palm out, and spoke to the space, not to any one person. "Friends, I want to leave safely," he said, steady as a teacher taking attendance. "Please give me 2 arm lengths of space so the car can pass. Thank you." He did not wait to see who would agree. He walked the words with his feet. He stepped to an invisible line where the paint of the lane met a faint crack in the asphalt, planted himself there, and made that line the border. He did not block anyone, he simply showed, with his body and his open hands, where safe distance lived. The clerk, Rita, moved a little closer to the window again. She had her phone in her hand. She did not point it like a spotlight, she held it like a lamp. The pickup driver opened his door and stood with one shoulder against the cab, just watching, relaxed but present. The woman at the far pump took a small step where she could see better. No one rushed. No one shouted. But the number of eyes on the moment grew, layer by layer, until the scene felt held by the community, like a bowl held by many hands. The young rider looked at Marcus's open hands and then at the line in the pavement. He gave a quick laugh that sounded more shy than proud. 2 arms, huh, he said, trying for a joke. Marcus nodded. "It keeps everyone safe," he replied. "Helps me see, helps you move." He made the distance with his own arms and then let them rest by his sides again, palms visible. Even his palms did quiet work. They told a simple truth: I am not hiding anything. I am here in the light. The tall rider weighed the air. His jaw tightened for a beat and then eased. He looked left at the rider who had slid across the lane and said, not unkindly, "Give him a lane." That sentence turned a corner. It was leadership without a speech. The rider moved his bike enough to make a clear path. The click of the kickstand when it settled was the sound of a choice made. Marcus gave a small nod of thanks. He did not rush to climb back in, because rushing would have made it look like he was trying to dodge people. Instead, he stood where the cameras could see him and used a voice that carried to the edges of the lot without pushing. "I appreciate it," he said. "I'll drive out slow." He reached for his door handle and felt a small tug of discomfort in his chest. It was not fear, it was awareness. He knew that even with a path clear, a group can sometimes shift again if one person feels they are losing face. He scanned gently. The young rider still looked unsettled, like someone who wanted to fix the thing he had knocked but did not know how. Marcus gave him something to do. "Would you mind," he asked, pointing to the single ice cube that had skittered under the front tire, "kicking that back so I don't crush it? The pop might startle someone." The young rider blinked, then smiled because the request made him helpful. He nudged the cube out with the side of his boot. It slid to the middle of the lane and began to melt in the sun. "Thanks," Marcus said. Teamwork. It could have ended right there. It almost did. But the breaking point chose one more test. A rider who had been at the edge of the group, a little separate, walked up with his helmet hanging from 2 fingers. He glanced at Rita's phone, at the pickup driver, at the camera under the eaves, and then at Marcus. His voice was not loud, but it had a shape that asks for a line to be drawn. "You recording us?" he asked. Marcus felt the question land. It was not about the phone, it was about respect. He answered with the shape it needed. "I'm not recording you," he said. "I asked the clerk to be ready to call for help if needed. She and others are here as witnesses for everyone. I want a safe exit. That is all." He did not add extra words. He let the sentence stand like a fence post, plain and vertical. The rider looked at Rita again. Rita lifted her chin a little and said through the glass, calm and clear, "If anyone needs help, I call. That's my job." Her tone had the firm kindness of a librarian asking people to return books on time. The rider seemed to accept that. He rolled his shoulders and nodded once, slow. Then a small, clumsy moment came like a pebble you do not see on a path. The same rider brushed the mirror with the edge of his helmet as he turned. The mirror tipped inward with a soft click. No crack. No mark. Just a tilt. It was the second time the mirror had moved that day, and the group felt the echo of it. Heads turned. Heat rose in faces that did not want to look careless twice. This was the worst moment not because something broke, but because pride wobbled. Pride can tip people more than any push. Marcus saw it. He met the moment before it grew teeth. "It's all right," he said in a voice even softer than before. He stepped forward, touched the back of the mirror with 2 fingers, and raised it the tiny notch to true. The click was clean, like a seat belt sliding home. He stepped back so everyone could see it was fine. "See," he said with a small, honest smile. "Back to perfect." The rider with the helmet exhaled. The young rider rubbed the back of his neck and let out a breath too. The tall rider's shoulders lost another ounce of weight. Marcus felt the tide turn, but he did not take a victory lap. He knew better. He did what good sailors do when a gust dies down. He kept his hands on the wheel and watched the telltales. He spoke again, setting the plan like a gentle drum beat. "Here is what I will do," he said. "I will get in my car. I will turn on my hazard lights. I will pull forward very slowly. Please keep the 2-arm distance as I pass. If anyone needs me to stop, say stop in a clear voice, and I will stop." He paused to let that map settle in minds. People like maps. Maps turn feelings into steps. He got in. He clicked his belt. He tapped the hazard switch. The soft blink began, a small metronome of caution. Before he shifted to drive, he looked once more at faces. He saw no challenge there now, only a mix of relief and mild awkwardness. Good. Awkward is the cousin of safe. Yet he made one more choice, the choice that would mark the moment in his memory. He picked up his phone, opened the camera, and switched to the front-facing view. He set the phone in the holder so the screen looked at him, not at anyone else, and pressed the video button. He spoke toward the screen with slow clarity. "My name is Marcus Reed. I am leaving the station at," he checked the dashboard clock and named the time. I am driving out slowly with my hazard lights on. If anyone calls for help, I will stop. He nodded once and left the phone recording there, not aimed at people, only at his own face, as proof of his plan and tone. The pickup driver gave a thumbs up from his spot. The woman by the far pump lifted her chin in a small sign of support. Through the glass, Rita touched the keypad on the counter and, with a motion Marcus could read, saved a quick note about the time, the same way clerks note price changes and delivery arrivals. Details matter, and she was a detail person. He appreciated that. Marcus took a breath. It filled him without hurry and left without push. He felt the old rhythm under his ribs, the one he had used in noisy tents and quiet rooms: count 4 in, count 4 out, let your shoulders fall, let your eyes soften, let your words choose honesty over heat. He remembered his mother's sentence, hold the door for peace. He was holding it now with his hands on a steering wheel. He shifted to drive and let the car creep. A bike mirror flashed sunlight and then went still, out of his path. A boot lifted from the lane. The young rider drew his two palms back to his own chest as if measuring the two-arm rule in his body. The tall rider stood with one hand resting on his own handlebar, watching like a person keeping count at a school game. No one spoke. That silence was not empty, it was full of agreement. Halfway past, Marcus saw the rider with the helmet glance toward the road. His mouth moved with a word Marcus could not hear. The word looked like go. It was a permission, and more than that, it was a shared wish that the day return to normal. Marcus answered it with a small nod, kept his wheel straight, and rolled until the car's front tires met the edge of the lane. Then, from somewhere beyond the trees, a faint sound floated in thin, far, hardly more than a whisper. It was the sound of help moving in the world, the kind of sound that says, if you need us, we are coming. It might have been a siren on a distant road. It might have been something else. It did not matter which. What mattered was the feeling it carried: you are not alone out here. Marcus reached the mouth of the lot and stopped to check traffic. He looked once more in the rearview mirror. He did not see enemies back there. He saw travelers, same as him, standing in the warm light of a small station, learning in real time how to steer Pride and keep a day from tipping. He saw Rita's shoulder relax as she turned away from the window. He saw the pickup driver climb back in and close his door with a friendly thump. He saw the young rider lift the fallen glove from the pavement and clip it back on his belt like a person fixing a small thing so the big things can stay calm. In that mirror, Marcus also saw himself, a man with a clear plan, a steady breath, and open hands. The worst of the moment had come and gone, not with a crash, but with a few tiny clicks: a cup, a mirror, a hazard light, and with choices stacked carefully like dishes that do not rattle when you walk. He took one last breath for good measure and set his eyes on the road ahead. He made his decision, the one that would guide whatever came next. He would carry this calm with him, mile after mile, and he would keep it ready not just for himself but for anyone who needed to borrow a little of it. If help arrived, they would find a quiet scene and people already choosing the better road. If help passed by on a different call, that would be fine too. The work had been done here by neighbors in a parking lot, by soft voices, by patience, by a mirror that clicked back to true with 2 fingers and a little respect. He pressed the pedal and joined the slow stream of cars, the blink-blink of his hazards still ticking like a small promise: steady, steady, steady. Marcus drove out with his hazard lights blinking like calm little beacons. The road ahead was clear, but he kept his speed slow for a few seconds, checking the mirrors the way a careful pilot checks the sky. He breathed in, breathed out, and felt the tight air of the parking lot ease from his chest. The day seemed to settle back into its gentle rhythm. Still, he kept a thoughtful eye on the station in his rear view. He wanted to be sure the scene stayed quiet for everyone still there: the clerk, the kid, the woman at the far pump, the riders who were now moving with more care. A thin sound floated on the wind, not loud, just a distant note that rose and fell. It was the kind of sound you hear when help is somewhere on the move. Marcus could not tell if it was heading to the station or passing on a different call, but he knew a simple thing he could do. He guided his car onto the wide shoulder a short distance from the driveway, turned the wheel so the tires were safe and straight, and kept his hazard lights on. He wanted to make space for any vehicle that might need to turn in, and he wanted to be easy to find if someone needed his account of what had happened. He looked into the phone that still recorded his face and said, steady and plain, "I have pulled over just past the station. I will wait here for a few minutes in case any officer needs to talk." He spoke the time again. He let the phone keep recording and set it where it could see his hands on the wheel. Open hands and clear words, those were the best tools he owned. In less than a minute a patrol car rounded the bend and turned into the station. There was no rush in the way it moved, only practiced care. Marcus watched the car enter the lot and park at a simple angle that kept space open for everyone else. He saw the officer step out with that calm walk you learn from many days of sorting small troubles before they grow. The officer raised a hand in a quiet greeting to the clerk through the window, then looked around the lot in a slow circle, taking in the whole picture without hurry. Marcus waited. He did not wave the patrol car down or drive back in. The officer did not yet need him inside the circle. A few breaths later, a second patrol car arrived and parked at the far edge, leaving lanes open. Two officers spoke briefly near the door, then one walked toward the riders with easy steps and the other went to the clerk's counter. The lot did not feel tense now. It felt held. Marcus turned off his hazard lights, signaled, and rolled back into the driveway with the slow courtesy of someone entering a library. He stopped well short of the group and put the car in park again. He kept his hands at 10 and 2. When one officer glanced his way, Marcus gave a small nod and stayed in his seat. He did not need to insert himself. He would speak when asked, and he would keep it short and true. The officer at the counter spoke with Rita, who pointed to the cameras and then to a small black binder near the register. She opened it to a page where she had jotted the time and a few clean notes. Mirror touched, no damage. Customer asked for space. Phone ready. Calm tone. Marcus felt a warm respect for that kind of clear record. Over by the pumps, the other officer gently asked the riders to stand with more space between them and to keep the lane open. The tall rider, who had earlier said give him a lane, nodded and set the tone again for his group with a single small gesture. The young rider stood with his hands behind his back, staring at the pavement the way a person does when he feels a little foolish. The rider with the helmet held that helmet at his side like a reminder to handle things with care. The officer near the group looked over, met Marcus's eyes, and gave a quiet tilt of the head that meant one moment. Then, after checking that everyone in the lot had room, the officer walked toward Marcus's car. Marcus lowered his window and kept both hands where they could be seen. He did not over-explain, he did not try to steer the story. He simply answered the first question with facts. "Good afternoon," the officer said, voice even. "Are you the driver who asked for space to leave?" "Yes, sir," Marcus said. "My name is Marcus Reed. I was at that pump. A bike brushed my mirror lightly, no harm. The area got crowded. I asked for 2 arm lengths of space and turned on my hazards. I drove out slow. I parked on the shoulder to be available if needed." The officer listened without interrupting. He glanced once at the mirror, once at the lane, and once at the clerk. "Any damage to your vehicle?" "No, sir," Marcus said. "I adjusted the mirror back. Everything is fine. Any threats, raised voices, or unsafe moves you want to report?" the officer asked, still calm, still neutral. "No threats," Marcus said. A cup of ice slid and spilled a little. I picked it up. I used a steady voice and stayed near the cameras. I asked for space so I could leave safely. That's all." The officer nodded. "Thank you for staying calm," he said. He looked at the phone in the cradle and then back to Marcus. Recording for your own account. Yes, sir, Marcus said. It's pointed at me only, for clarity on my tone and timing. That's acceptable, the officer replied. Please wait right here while I speak with the others. I may ask you to repeat those details once. Of course, Marcus said. The officer returned to the group. His partner had already gathered quick notes from Rita and had taken a look at the camera view on the monitor. There was no rush, no drama, just steady work. The officers kept everyone standing in places that made sense, riders near their bikes, other customers by their cars, the clerk inside with a line of sight to the whole lot. The pickup driver had stepped to the side and told the second officer he had witnessed the request for space and the careful way the car left. The woman from the far pump said she heard the steady tone Marcus used and saw the mirror adjusted twice with gentle hands. Small facts. Straight lines. The tall rider rubbed the back of his neck and said to the officer, "We were stopping for gas. A mirror got bumped." He said no problem. It got a little tight in there. He did not try to dress it up. He did not look for a spotlight. He seemed ready to let the truth be small and accurate. The officer asked if any keys were taken or tossed. The tall rider shook his head. The young rider glanced at his boots and then raised his hand halfway like a student. I tapped his cup by accident, he said. I slid. He picked it up. He was calm. The rider looked relieved to say it out loud. Truth lightens a person. The officer pointed at the painted lane and spoke to the group in a tone that was more like a coach than a critic. This area is for passing. Keep it clear. Cameras show the lane tight for a moment. We need better. If someone asks for space, give it right away. That keeps everyone safe. Heads nodded, not just in the group but around the lot. People like rules that are both simple and fair. The rider with the helmet lifted it a little, as if making a small show to himself. I touched his mirror again by accident, he said, not proud, just honest. He fixed it? Twice. He could have made it a big deal. He didn't. He looked toward Marcus's car, then back at the officer. We'll keep it wide. Sorry for the fuss. That was the moment when regret landed not in a harsh way, but in a learning way. You could see it move across faces like a cloud's shadow, quick, soft, and real. Regret can be a good teacher when there is no harm done. It points a person to the better road. The officer gave a small nod, then turned toward Marcus. Mr. Reed, he called, in a voice that carried like a friendly bell. Could you join us for a moment? Marcus stepped out, kept his hands open, and stood where the cameras could see all of them. He repeated his short account, word for word, without adding color. The officer thanked him and asked, "Do you need a report number for insurance?" "No, sir," Marcus said. "Nothing is damaged. I only wanted a safe exit." The officer wrote a brief note on a small pad and tore the top sheet free. "This is the time and my badge number," he said. "If anything changes later, you can call the non-emergency line and reference this." Marcus folded the paper and slid it into his wallet. Rita stepped out then, just to the doorway, and called, "Does anyone need water?" She held up 2 bottles from the cooler, a simple peace offering in plastic. The officer smiled and waved thanks. The young rider raised a hand, not to take a bottle, but to say, "We're good." He looked at Marcus. "Sir," he said, voice steady now, "I'm sorry about the crowding and the cup. I'll watch my space better." His friends stood quiet so the words could land. "Thank you," Marcus said. "I accept that." He did not try to turn it into a lesson. He did not try to balance any scales. He gave the apology a soft place to land and left it there. The officers did one more slow walk around the lot, checking sight lines, checking that the lane was open, checking that the small normal sounds had returned. The key wind chime made its friendly notes. The soda cooler hummed. A bird flashed past and settled on the mural's painted wing like it wanted to join the picture. The world looked like itself again. "Here's how we'll finish," the officer said to the riders, speaking like a person who sets chairs back after a meeting. "Fuel up if you need to. Leave the passing lane clear. Keep voices low. Keep movements easy. If you're tired from the road, rest a bit, but do it in a way that gives others space. Understood?" The group answered in a ripple of yes, sir, and understood, some quiet, some almost under their breath. Then the officer turned to Marcus. "Thank you for your steady manner," he said. "It helped everyone do better." He paused and added, curious but not prying, "Former service?" "Yes, sir," Marcus said. "Medical?" "I've had good teachers." "Well," the officer said, "you spoke like one today." He offered a small, respectful nod. Marcus returned it with the same measure. The pickup driver called out, "Good job, all," like a neighbor closing a block party. The woman from the far pump gave a thumbs up and then drove off, her turn signal ticking with a calm beat. The young rider bent and picked up a stray wrapper that had skittered near the curb. He tucked it in a pocket without looking for praise. The tall rider checked that his group was standing clear of the lane and adjusted his own bike a few inches farther back than needed, as if to say, "This is how wide we'll keep it now." Marcus returned to his car. He touched the mirror once more, not because it needed it, but because the clean click felt like a period at the end of a long sentence. He stopped his phone recording and saved the file. He tucked the phone away and rested both hands on the wheel. He did not rush to leave. He sat for a breath and let gratitude rise in him, not for any spotlight moment, but for the simple grace of a small place where people had chosen the better path. The officers stepped back to their cars. One spoke into the radio with a short, calm update. "No lights, no noise, just closure." Rita put the water bottles back in the cooler and put a soft, proud order back into her gum display. The kid at the freezer glass returned to tracing shapes only he could see, safe again in his small game. Marcus put the car in gear. He looked once more to ensure everyone had room. Then he turned his wheel toward the open road. As he rolled past the driveway, the tall rider gave him a brief nod. No show, no speech, just a small sign between travelers that said, "We found the steady way." Marcus nodded back and eased onto the highway. The sky looked wide and honest. The air through the open window felt like a clean page. He turned off his hazard lights, checked the steady rhythm of the engine, and let the road carry him forward. Behind him, the station kept its calm. Ahead of him, the day stretched out, ready for the next good choice. He thought of his mother's line, the one he had held all morning, "Hold the door for peace." In his mirror, he saw the door still open behind him, and that was enough. Marcus let the highway gather him up like a long, steady breath. The tires hummed a calm song on the pavement, and the wind through the half-open window felt cool on his forearm. He checked his mirrors out of habit now more than need and saw the station growing smaller behind him, just a quiet picture in the glass. The hazard lights were off. His shoulders were loose. He could feel the day turn a page. He spoke once more, softly, to the phone that still sat in its holder. "I am back on the road," he said. "Everything is peaceful." He saved the recording and tucked the phone away, not because he wanted proof, but because he liked finishing a thing neatly. Then he turned up the radio one click and let a familiar song fill the car. He did not sing along. He simply listened, the way a person listens to rain. Miles passed. Fields changed to long fences, then to small clusters of houses, then to a stretch of trees where sunlight broke into moving coins across the hood. He thought about the small steps that had carried the morning: look, breathe, choose. He smiled at how plain those words were and how much they could hold. He did not feel like a hero. He felt like a careful driver who had kept a lane open, nothing more and, in its way, everything. When he reached the next town, he pulled into a rest area. He stretched his legs, filled his water bottle, and stood for a minute under a shade tree with leaves that talked to each other in the breeze. He called his sister to say he was on schedule. He did not go into details. He said only, had a busy moment at a small station. All good. She said, I'm glad you were there. He said, me too. Back on the road, he thought of the people who had helped without making a show of it, the clerk with the careful notes, the pickup driver with the steady witness, the woman by the far pump with the quiet thumbs up. He thought of the riders too, the tall one who offered space with a few words, the young one who nudged an ice cube instead of his pride, the one with the helmet who owned a mistake and then stood a little softer. It comforted him to remember that most people, given a clear map, will follow it toward better ground. By late afternoon, Marcus pulled into his apartment lot. The building held the gentle sounds of a weekday, soft music from a window, a laugh from the laundry room, the thump of mail in a slot. He carried his bag upstairs and set it on the neat rug by the door. Before anything else, he went to the sink and washed his hands, running cool water over his wrists. It was an old habit from hospital days, a quiet way to reset. He stepped out to the parking area with a small cloth to wipe his mirror. It was already clean, but the habit comforted him. As he wiped, his neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, waved from her porch. Long drive, she asked. Not so long, he said. Just long enough to be grateful for home. She smiled. That is the best length, she said, and went back to her book. Inside, Marcus opened a small notebook he kept by the bread box. On the first empty line he wrote the date and 3 neat bullet points: 2-arm rule on tight lanes, speak to the space, not the person, open hands, steady tone, stand in good light. He closed the notebook and set it square on the counter. He warmed leftovers, ate quietly, and then took a short walk as the sky began to fade. It felt good to move with no hurry, to feel the soft give of evening air, to see porch lights click on one by one like small friendly stars. The next morning he woke before his alarm, rested and steady. On his phone was a short message from a number he did not know. It was from the station owner. Rita must have shared his number with permission from the officer. The message was simple: thank you for yesterday's comm. We added a sign to remind people to keep the lane clear. You're welcome anytime. There was a small photo attached. It showed a painted stripe on the ground and a neat sign near the pumps: please give 2 arm lengths of space. Keep this lane open. The letters were clean and friendly, not scolding, like a neighbor's note on a shared gate. Marcus smiled. He replied with thanks and a wish for a steady week. He put on coffee and headed to work at the warehouse. The morning meeting was brief. He gave updates, listened to others, and then, before they broke, he asked for 1 extra minute. Small share, he said. Yesterday I learned again how simple steps help in busy spots. If our loading area gets tight, let's remember 2 arms of space, clear lanes, and calm voices. If someone says, stop, we stop. If someone asks for room, we make it. We're good at this already, but it never hurts to say it out loud. Heads nodded. A few folks added quick examples of their own. One mentioned how a clear heads up in a gentle tone works better than a loud blast. Another said she liked the idea of speaking to the space, keep the doorway clear instead of speaking at a person. They all went to their tasks a little taller, not because he had given a speech, but because they had all agreed to a simple map. 3 days later, Marcus found a small envelope in his mailbox. Inside was a short note on sturdy paper. It was from the officer who had taken his account. Mr. Reed, the note said, thanks for your steady manner. We've added a reminder to our patrol training about asking groups to keep the lane open in plain words. Your phrase about 2 arm lengths is a good one. Stay well. It was signed with the officer's name and a tidy badge number. Marcus placed the note inside his notebook with the 3 bullets, like a leaf pressed for memory. A week after that, he received another message from the station, this time a flyer image. Community Safety Night, Simple Steps for Calm Spaces, it read. Underneath were 4 small lines, clear lanes. Open hands. 2-arm rule. Kind voice. In the corner, in friendly italics, hosted by your local station. Snacks provided. Rita added a text, if you're free to share for 10 minutes, we'd be honored. Marcus thought about it for a breath and then said yes. On the evening of the event, he drove back along the same road. The sun sat low and warm, and the fields looked like brushed gold. When he turned into the station lot, he saw a few folding chairs arranged in a loose half-circle by the mural. The sign about the 2-arm rule stood near the pumps. A small plate of cookies sat on a table with paper cups and a pitcher of water. It was humble and perfect. People arrived, not a crowd, just a good handful. The pickup driver was there, wearing the same cap, and the woman from the far pump came too, this time with her teenage daughter. 2 local riders rolled up and parked neatly, taking care to keep the lane wide. Rita welcomed everyone, thanked them for coming, and then gestured to Marcus. No spotlight. No big introduction. Just a neighbor giving another neighbor the floor. He kept it simple. He stood where the camera could see the whole group, not because anyone planned to share a video, but because good light felt like good practice. He told the short version of the morning: a mirror that moved, a tight lane, a calm ask for space. He spoke about choosing words that invite agreement, like please help me leave safely and 2 arm lengths for everyone. He showed how to hold open hands and how to stand where people can see your face. He offered one small trick for tense moments: give a restless person a helpful task, like moving a small object out of the way or pointing out a clear path. He ended with a sentence he loved: hold the door for peace. He said it twice, once plain and once a little slower so it could settle. People nodded. A rider tapped 2 fingers on his chest gently, as if to say, I'll carry that. The teenager raised her hand and asked how to help a parent stay calm if someone else is loud. Marcus said, breathe out first. Use a soft voice and say, I'm with you. Let's give space. Then model it with your feet. After the short talk, they practiced. It was not formal. People simply walked 2 arms apart and tried phrases in friendly voices. They laughed a little, not at anyone, but with each other. Rita wrote the key phrases on a small whiteboard and propped it near the door so customers would see: 2 arms of space. Keep the lane open. Kind voice, clear plan. It looked almost like a cafe menu, and in a way, it was small offerings to make the day easier to digest. Before he left, Marcus bought a bottle of water and a small pack of mints. He dropped change in the youth jar and thanked Rita for holding the space. We're lucky you stopped here that day, she said. He shook his head. We're lucky this place exists, he replied. It reminds people that small signs and kind voices are not fancy, but they work. In the days that followed, a gentle effect spread. A delivery driver told his friends about the 2 arm rule. A teacher wrote the phrase speak to the space on a sticky note near her classroom door. The station owner painted a thin bright line where cars should not stand, and people respected it without complaint because the ask was fair and easy. None of it became a big story. It became something better, a shared habit. Marcus kept living his steady life. He worked his shifts, called his sister, fixed a squeak on the pantry door, and watered the small plant on his windowsill until its leaves shone. He added a tenth of his paycheck to the youth center jar whenever he passed by. He carried his mother's coin in his pocket and rubbed it sometimes when he needed to remind himself to choose the Kinder road. He slept well, not because the world was always simple, but because simple steps were ready when the world was not. One Saturday, weeks later, he decided to take the long way to visit an old friend outside town. The route would pass the station near sunset. He smiled at the thought and left early enough to stop. When he pulled in, the lot glowed with the warm light that makes everything look touched by honey. The key wind chime sang a little song in the breeze. The sign about 2 arm lengths stood in its usual place, and the painted line looked fresh and clear. Inside, Rita was stocking a shelf with chips. She looked up and beamed. "You're back," she said. He nodded and picked out a bottle of iced tea. He added a bag of dried mango to the counter, then reached into his pocket and found the coin he had carried for years, the one that had belonged to his mother, darkened a little at the edges from time and touch. He turned it in his fingers, feeling the soft ridges, and then looked at the jar for the youth center. It was more than half full. He did not make a speech. He did not explain. He simply tilted the coin above the jar and let it drop. It landed with a gentle, bright sound that felt like a bell rung for good choices. Rita saw what it was and pressed her hand to her heart for a second, as if she understood the small ceremony and wanted to honor it with silence. Back outside, Marcus walked along the line near the pumps. 2 travelers were refueling, keeping a careful space without being told. A boy of about 8 stood near the mural with a melting ice pop, watching the swirls of color on the painted bird's wing. He glanced at Marcus, looked at the ice pop, then at Marcus again with a shy question in his eyes. "You want a bite?" he asked finally, "child brave." Marcus laughed softly. "That is kind," he said. "You enjoy it?" "It looks perfect." The boy grinned and took a careful lick. The sound of a distant train rolled through the evening, low and easy. The sky went the deep, sweet blue that belongs to summer's edge. Marcus took a clean cloth from his pocket and wiped the last, nearly invisible smudge from his mirror. It clicked into place with that small, perfect sound he liked. He slid into the driver's seat, set the iced tea in the holder, and took one last look at the station. Nothing dramatic waited there, just a sign with plain words, a chime that liked the wind, a jar slowly filling with coins from strangers, and people who now knew how to give each other space. He started the engine. The car answered with a friendly hum. He checked his mirrors and pulled out, leaving the place as he had found it, maybe a touch better, because that is what happens when many hands and kind voices share a small map. As the road opened, he felt light in the way that good work makes a person light. The lines on the highway stretched forward like quiet promises. He did not know where his steady habits would be needed next. He only knew this: calm does not arrive by accident. Someone carries it in, sets it on the counter, and holds the door wide until others walk through. He could do that. He would keep doing that. And somewhere behind him, at a little station with a mural of a flying bird, a clerk was closing up for the night, a wind chime was still singing, and a small sign was telling the truth in simple words anyone could follow.